Welcome to the Reclaim Leader podcast. I'm Jason Tucker.
And I'm Jesse Skiffington.
We're two pastors in the trenches who are passionate about church health for greater gospel impact.
We share the ups and downs of ministry, strategies that worked for us,
and some that didn't.
Best practices and practical tools for church leadership.
The goal, to help all of our churches flourish. Let's get started.
See another sunrise, sing a little song.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reclaim Leader podcast. It is good to be with you again. And Jesse, really good to be with you. You know, every week we talk about that, but this really is a lifeline for me with everything going on in life and
there's just a
ministry. It's great to just get a minute to unpack and just to get some clarity around what's going on. And today's episode is really, it was sort of a last minute decision because I wanted to camp out on this idea of what we were talking about with Gen Z. Mm-hmm. I thought maybe it's a little more helpful for our listeners to hear from the actual people working with Gen Z. So I invited Lindsey, who is our director of Next Gen, to come on and just talk with us about what she's seeing.
Yeah.
My boys just got back. They just had a retreat and a winter retreat and came back and just listened to them talk about their experience and friends and faith conversations. She has some things figured out. And so I thought it'd be good to bring her back on. And
so great. Well, it's funny. Early in the episode, we'll hear this in a minute. You ask, how long has it been since she's been on? And I was like, I don't know, a year or two. It's been 6 years. So
6 years.
Super cool to have her back with us. And it was kind of fun. It was like sitting in on a Tower Hill staff meeting today. I got to listen, to hear what makes you tick. And you guys seem to mostly get along, which is great. So
hey, listen,
it's fun. You know, we talk about getting to hear from pastors, you know, working in the trenches. We're in the, grind of ministry and all that. And so today we get to hear from Lindsey, who's in the trenches of Next Gen Ministry and working with the young people coming up and seeing and noticing some things from what do you guys call it? From cradle to college or
cradle to college. Yeah.
So, I mean, pretty cool to get that perspective. So I know everybody will enjoy getting to hear Lindsey's perspective.
Yeah. And listen, if you're new to the podcast, welcome. I'm glad you found us on the internet, however you found us. It's always a mystery to me. But glad to have you here. And we're just all about trying to help churches figure this stuff out. Mm-hmm. And it's not like we've arrived. We're figuring it out along with you. But we thought, let's open the conversation and hopefully we can say some things that'll spark some ideas for you or encourage you at just the right time. And we just trust, that God will find whatever it is that you need and sift it out for you. But we'd also love it if you'd share the podcast. There's so many pastors out there looking for encouragement. So we'd love it if you'd send this to a colleague if it's helpful for you. And you can always find us, reclaimleader.com. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, our email or our website's always up there. And that's how you can contact us and email us and all those things. So anyway, thanks so much for listening. Let's get to it. Here's our interview with Lindsey Larkin. Well, I am so excited to introduce our guest today as we're talking about Next Gen and Gen Z. And it's really a continuation of the conversation that we had last week. But our director of Next Gen Ministries here at Tower Hill is with us today, and she oversees everything cradle to college. She is a key part of our leadership team and the only person who laughs when leaders throw water balloons at her. Please welcome back to the podcast, Lindsey Larkin. Welcome, Lindsey.
I never would have expected that that's how my introduction would go, but I kind of like it, actually.
That's right.
It says a lot about my character, I guess.
Well, Lindsey, before we hit record, I was sharing with you, I was like, when did we have Lindsey on? So, Jesse, if you had to guess, what episode, so this is episode 381, when did we have Lindsey on?
I'm going to go with, let's go with 247.
247. Not even close. Check this out. Episode 32.
What?
6 years ago.
Whoa. And she
must have
hangs
messed up
out with
pretty
you and
bad.
talks with you and like you guys work together and stuff?
Yeah, she was on with Amanda Forbes. We were talking about a summer strategy for kids ministry.
That far back. Wow. Well,
I know.
Yeah, I
Long
don't
overdue.
remember more than a week ago. So, it's not a shock.
I know. I was shocked when I went back.
That's awesome. Well, good to have you back, Lindsey.
Thank you.
Now, Lindsey, she was working in kids ministry. Lindsey, remind me, what year did you take over? What year did we make you the director of Next Gen?
I believe it was 2019. So
Yeah.
it was probably the summer or fall of 2019. So probably shortly after the last time I was on here.
Yeah. Man, what a ride. What a what a ride it has been. I wanted to ask you, just kind of jumping in here, I wanted to ask you about, a lot of pastors and youth leaders are just kind of wondering what's next. Definitely in last week's episode, we were talking about there's a spiritual openness of Gen Z that's really amazing. And when we say Gen Z, we're really sort of including the generation under them, Gen Alpha. They sort of process things the same way. So we're kind of lumping them together for now. But I'd love to just know, gosh, the last 6 years of this journey, what have you seen? What are some things that stick out to you that have really changed even just since when you started?
It's interesting to me that this particular group within Gen Z, I would say, we talk about them all the time when it comes to technology and how they are so much smarter than us when it comes to anything tech related. And they don't mind pointing it out to let you know. But as important as it is to them, I've seen a difference in how they necessarily want to process it here at church. So I really think, I remember when I first started this job, I was very worried about, is it techie enough? Are we showing enough graphics? Are we including enough screens and different things like that? And now that doesn't seem to be what hits them anymore. They still like technology, but it's really everything for them is relational. And they want a genuine, authentic relational experience. It seems like every time they're here at church, and when they get that, they're happy. And I noticed that maybe is a little bit less with Gen Alpha. I think they are still a little bit harder to please, especially when it comes to the technology. So they are not quite the same, but like our high schoolers particularly, it's relational.
Yeah. What are you seeing that's really working? So you talk about that it's highly relational. Where are some examples of where you're seeing that happen?
So for us, we've really, I would say over the last few years, really looked at in particular, our youth group nights. The old model, even when I was a youth volunteer, 8 or 9 years ago, it was heavily game focused. It was a lot of, the crazier the game could be or the grosser the game, the kids were into it. That's changed a lot. They still like games, they still like to have fun, but they need a lot of time to just come in and build community with one another. So we've, even just changed the start of our night where they come in, we always start with food, but they have 30 minutes to really just interact with one another, mingle, go into our different breakout rooms, but just connect with their friends, with their leaders. And then, we still, the teaching is still really important, obviously, but they need a lot of small group time. So where in the past, we would be willing to sacrifice some of that small group time in order to have more fun or do more games, we see now where we really need to focus on the small group time with them, particularly with the high schoolers, and try to give them as much small group time as possible so that they are talking to their small group leaders, they're connecting with one another even more. And so the relational piece, especially how we train our small group leaders to be in those spaces with them, is crucial, definitely.
Yeah. Well, talk about that a little bit, because we're working on some of the same kind of concepts. I think a couple of years ago, we started doing dinner and then small group and then games kind of toward the end and the fun part of the night. But what are the things that you're coaching your leaders on as far as the environment that you're trying to create in those groups? Is there some things you guys have hit on that seem to be working?
It's pretty much the same as how we train our adult small group leaders to, lead a Bible study of adults. But you really want to make sure you're creating a safe space where the kids feel seen, they feel heard, they don't feel judged. There's an openness. We have kids that go to school together. We have kids that, aren't friends outside of here. So that brings in a lot of extra dynamics. And we just try to get our small group leaders to, as they work through that and they figure out like the questions based on the topic each week, to get to know their students so that they know where to lead that discussion. They know how to, kind of maneuver through those dynamics that might be under the surface that aren't really visible, and connecting with them outside of church. So we have one of our small group leaders is really good at this. She leads our 10th grade girls. And so she got them together outside of youth group just to get together and go paint pottery. And then she went and picked it up for them. So we're trying to encourage them to get out with their students outside of here even. And it's a lot of follow-ups with our leaders all the time to continue to talk about what's working well for you, what's not, what can we do to help you be more successful as a small group leader. And I feel like those conversations and even just modeling how do we build relationship with them helps them model it with their students.
No, it's really good.
I was wondering, Lindsey, have you seen, so I have a hunch that it just feels like, I don't know if it's our kids or if it's sort of a generational thing, because I've seen it. I saw it on the retreat I was on with other kids a couple of weeks ago. And that is, there seems to be more of an openness for kids to, I notice it in worship or singing worship songs, to really kind of go deep and sort of all in with worship in a way that's a little bit different than I saw in earlier generations. I don't know if that's something is it a reflection of our kids, or is this something that you're sort of noticing as well? It just feels like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's more heartfelt. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe less of a need. They love the jump up and down and hand motion stuff, but there's also something about like the really slow, contemplative songs that just seem different to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I have seen that with ours too. I mean, they definitely, they love a good song where they can do a hand motion or a dance to. And they have their favorites here that they always want included, whenever we have Dan come and do music with us. But I think they are in such a spot of yearning to want to go deeper that it's coming through in every aspect of worship, from music to like just how they're engaging during a sermon or a talk, or even just going deeper in small group time. We were on a retreat this past weekend. We took away 54 middle schoolers and high schoolers for a winter blast retreat at Camp Orchard Hill. And something that I thought was really interesting, because I'm just really used to talking to middle schoolers and high schoolers all the time. But one of our female leaders who was on the trip said to us, because she was working with our high schoolers, and she was like, I couldn't believe how deep they went in small groups so quickly. And she goes, I've been in a ton of small groups with adult women, and we've never gotten that deep that quickly. And I just think it's a reflection of the chaos in the world around them. And there's so much divide and strife that they see. I think they come here looking for hope, and they, it's nice that they know that they're searching for it here. Like, they're looking for God and how to really incorporate that into their everyday lives. So they're willing to go deeper, quicker.
Do you think there's been, one of the things I've noticed is you've seen kids from now you're at the point where you've seen kids enter the preteen program all the way to graduation, right? I mean, you've seen that happen. And do you think it's, I just can't tell, is it our kids, or is it also the fact that they're so used to small groups? It's just a part of what they do. It's not a weird thing. They just have always done them now their whole time going through the program. So they sort of expect them.
I do think that's a part of it, because, our youth group program starts at 4th grade at preteen level. So, we do have kids that is just part of their normal church experience, where we definitely have adults who are coming in and, opening up and being vulnerable in the group. It's their first time they're doing it as an adult, and that's completely different. It's a very different experience. And so I think we can still get there with them, but it's a lot harder. But I would say even some of our students who come in, we have a lot of high schoolers right now whose parents don't necessarily go to our church, but they've heard about the program and they want to come. And even they go deep pretty fast. And I think it's building that confidence that they know it's a safe space for them. They know they can trust us. And I think it really all goes back to that relationship that we've been working so hard to develop with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you guys are doing, kind of thinking in terms of discipling the young people you have, what's the outreach part look like now? How are kids finding their way into group? You mentioned kind of new kids coming in, but is it functioning still kind of in the old, kind of the wide funnel at the top kind of way with lots of fun, and they come in deeper? What have you noticed about that? I'd just be curious.
Yeah, I do. I think we really need to make it a fun place. So no matter how deep we go, they still need to look at church as fun. The culture that we live in here in this little special part of New Jersey is that a lot of people don't look at church as fun. So I know a lot of our students will talk about going to school and saying they're going to church, like going to youth group. And people are like, oh, why? Is your parent making you? And they're like, no, actually, I want to go. Or I'm going away to some of them call it church camp. And they say they just see like the eye rolls and people are questioning them. So I think we are still breaking all kinds of just like cultural stereotypes of what church is. And so I think we have to let them know how fun it is, so I mean, definitely having, social media, like outreach where they can see videos and reels of what we're doing here to kind of give them kind of a front door glimpse before they, actually walk in is really helpful. But then really it's word of mouth. We definitely have even some of our students who are newer, who didn't grow up going here, their parents don't attend here. They are some of our biggest, I would say, inviters. They are constantly bringing new people and friends. And I think it's, that's amazing. They're like our unpaid spokesman in Monmouth County, definitely.
That's really cool. So they're coming and they're finding something that's meaningful to them. They're not getting anywhere else, and they become the best outreach tool that exists. That's really cool. One of the things I've noticed too a little bit in our dynamic is we have some of our young people coming to worship in church and listen to a sermon, and they seem really intent. I mean, some are even taking notes and stuff. And I'm like, and so we work really hard to engage with them. I try and bring in some, I don't know how you do, Jason, but to try and bring in something that speaks to them or acknowledges them. And one of the things we tried, have done quite a bit recently, is they'll give me a word that I have to sneak into the sermon that they're listening for. And then they cheer when, it's kind of just trying to have fun. But I've noticed that they're wanting to come and be a part of the whole community too, but there's still the awkwardness of young people and older people, different seasons of life. So how do we tackle that stuff? Because we want to meaningfully integrate young people into the life of the church. And we were talking about that, or the natural points, but how are you guys tackling that piece of the puzzle?
It's definitely not easy. So it is definitely an area that we we struggle with, and it's a challenge. But I think one of the easiest ways, and it's, also self-serving in a lot of ways, is telling them the importance of helping in Sunday school with the younger kids, so that, they get a chance to go in and not just be fed, but also learn to start feeding others. So we have a lot of high schoolers that help in Sunday school. We have some that help with our younger youth group programs, our preteen and middle school. So they get a chance to not only work with these kids younger than themselves, but they're serving alongside of adults of different ages. And then, other outreach events we do throughout the year, we try to always include our teenagers whenever we can. Probably the biggest of the year is still VBS, which I know is a big part of what we talked about 6 years ago when I was on. But that is a program where we really see a lot of our teens working with some of our older adults. And just a personal story, my daughter, who's 15 now, and she's a sophomore, she loves helping at VBS, and she kind of has made a makeshift grandma that she has just kind of adopted as a grandma that she would pick any day of the week to do, whenever she sees her, she lights up. They work at VBS together. And then throughout the year, when they see each other at church, it's amazing to see like the connection that they've built and how much they both care for one another. So I think VBS is the best way, but I think you have to always be looking for any opportunities that come up to include different ages.
So serving, one of the things we're trying to figure out is what are the natural points, and that makes a great deal of sense. Like then intergenerational relationship happens in a natural way rather than some forced way or something. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
You can't make it weird because they'll leave immediately, right?
I'll leave if it's weird. I mean, let alone
I'm a little
teenager,
quirky.
right?
I make it weird often, but
it's hard not to make it weird. There's lots of ideas that we've made really weird for kids over the years. Let's do mentors. Who? What? Who's going to talk? No. Yeah.
Well, I got to say too that just seeing firsthand, Lindsey, and this is nothing I haven't told you before, but seeing firsthand what's going on with the kids, and I've got 2 kids in the program now, and when they graduated through, and just seeing the relationships that these kids have formed and the space you've created for them to engage in their faith has been really, really remarkable. So I just want to ask you, Lindsey, I know you got just a few more minutes, but what advice would you give to churches who aren't getting a lot of teenagers yet, or maybe they don't know how to get started? Like, how do you get from where they are to where you are now? Not that we've arrived or anything like that, but just where would you recommend they get started?
Well, I would first say, don't give up. And I remember back to those dark, dreary days of COVID. And
I know what you're going to say.
Oh, yeah. Ministry was
Outdoor fire.
Yes. So this was probably one of my lowest points in ministry. Was we were in COVID, we were outside trying to follow, nobody knew what we were doing, right? But we were outdoors for youth group in the winter with a fire pit, still wearing masks, freezing cold. And I had 4 high schoolers. And I remember going home that night thinking, I really should just quit right now because I'm not clearly following the plan you have for me. And at this time, your oldest was in the high school program, and she was one of the 4 that was there. And we've just continued. Thankfully, I didn't give up. So I would say if you feel in that spot, don't give up, because there are seasons in ministry where you're going to see dips, you're going to see bigger numbers. From then to now, we've grown in size quite a bit. And I think the biggest reason we have is because we didn't give up. And we haven't gotten comfortable. So you can't get too comfortable in any one thing you're doing, because as soon as you are, it changes. And so always be willing to be flexible, to change what you're doing, and really get to know your community. Know the students who are coming, what they like doing, what speaks to them, because every church is different. And I think as long as you get to know those students and you build a relationship with them and you find other adults to pour into them, that's going to help, because it's definitely more than one person can take on by themselves. And the weight of it feels really heavy if you try to do it alone. So,
yeah, that's good. I want to squeeze this one in just because I know it's something you're excited about right now. Young adult ministry. We had a lot of fits and starts over the years. It feels like it has some momentum now. Tell us a little bit about what got us there.
So it's the right people, right? So we were lucky enough a few years ago to have an amazing high school senior who needed to do an internship program through her school. And so she interned here at our church, and she helped in Next Gen, and she was helping with high school ministry and middle school. And it was really her, like that transition from high school to college, that made us go, what's going to happen when you leave, right? Like this, like all of a sudden it like hit us in the face that this young student who had been such a part of our church all of a sudden was going off to college, and what was next. And so we got her and friends of hers to kind of really start from the ground up, this young adult program that was mostly meeting in the summers after, like when they were home from school. It was a lot of volleyball involved, and
A lot of volleyball.
They really get competitive. But a lot of different fun events, mini golf, I mean, they were playing like tennis court, baseball. I don't even know what that is, like a lot of fun things. But what happened from that is that it grew into us being able to actually, find a spot on our staff to hire one of these amazing young adults. And she's continuing on. She's got another job, but she is part-time for us here. And I think what's helped the most is that she's here in our high school program as a volunteer. And so she's building relationships with our current high schoolers. And that is really leading so that when they go to college, now we're starting to see they want to keep in contact with us. They want to be in Bible study with one another. And we're also seeing more and more young adults here in the area, especially just out of college, not being able to afford a place to live. So they're living with mom and dad still and trying to figure out life. And this has become a really great outlet for them. They meet every other Friday night here in the space I'm in now to have Bible study, to connect with one another. And I think we have to keep, this is the next area where we have to keep looking for what's going to speak to them, for how to engage with them so that we can really partner with them well, like where they're at in life.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I mean, it sounds like really cool forward progress in that area, and trying to figure out, an intergenerational church is not a simple thing to pull off well. And so, yeah, I'm grateful for how all the good work that you guys are doing, the ways God is up, at work in and through your ministry, Lindsey, and your team, and somehow, in spite of Jason's leadership, you guys are doing. So thank you for sticking with it.
Listen, he can be my biggest challenge. It's okay.
I know it's okay, but you might as well just air it out. You know what? Let's just consider this your performance review for this year. You're good to go. So
yeah.
No, that's great.
Yeah. High marks. Nice job.
Lindsey, thanks so much for jumping on. I know you got to run, but do appreciate it. If anybody wanted to reach out to you, Lindsey, what's a good way they can do that if they had questions?
They can email me. My email is on our website, but it's also just lindsey@towerhillchurch.org. So
awesome.
And listen, I hope it's not 6 more years until I'm back. It might be 2 at that point.
No, well, definitely at least 3.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. All right. Thanks, Lindsey.
All right. Thanks.
Well, Jason, I'm really glad Lindsey was able to take some time to jump on with us, and you had some leverage in that. You got to admit, you, as her boss, can you come on the podcast? The answer, I think, has to be yes. I'm not really sure. But anyway, super cool. Lindsey, thanks. If you're listening back, thanks for taking some time to be with us. And I was just thinking, what's the kind of the thread that we heard? And I think we kind of hit on this even a couple of weeks ago in our about next generation, how to reach them. But we heard a thread of community through groups and getting used to being in groups, community off at camp, at the retreat, of just being together and spending time together. And then, thinking about those young adult groups that are starting to form and the community around that there's a hunger, a desire for relationship alongside all the tech stuff, all the, the ways that life goes these days. And so that's something unique that the church has to offer, is a place to gather and be a community around a shared sense of God's love for us, or even beginning to understand that. So that was kind of what I was picking up on, is just the importance of community as we're thinking about.
Yeah, me too. And I think, 6 or 7 years after the release of that book, Growing Young by Kara Powell and others out of Fuller, the big thing that they said was warm is the new cool. And the idea that it's all about cultivating relationships and creating spaces for community with these kids. And they couldn't be any more spot on. Now that we've had a few years to sort of take a look at that, they were exactly right. That what's interesting is, and we didn't get into this a lot, but one thing Lindsey and I were talking about yesterday around our staff meeting was how this generation of teenagers, yes, they're just as addicted to their phones, but they seem a lot more self-governed in wanting to put the phone down to have an experience with one another. It doesn't seem to get in the way like it once did. And I don't know if that's a reflection of where our kids are or if it's a reflection of a generation sort of figuring that out.
Yeah, I think maybe some of both, but I mean, I know I listen to my 13-year-old son. I'll overhear him with his buddies. They're playing a game like Minecraft or I don't know. And then he goes, let's go outside and touch grass. They call it, like, let's go do something. So they ride bikes. I'm like, this is like a throwback. It's like a sort of like the 80s, but not really. I don't know. I don't know where he is. He's out there having fun, and I'm glad, but Yeah, there's something, I think, that they're developing a different kind of relationship with technology. There's a desire for authenticity that doesn't always get reflected in social media in those spaces. And so coming and just being together, I think that's something we can succeed at and facilitate in genuine ways. And I even loved hearing, as much as the emphasis on and community in a group with people that are in that same stage of life as them, but then having adult leaders to be in community with them. And then sometimes those young people go and serve in the church and start to build community with the other generations, and those relationships become really meaningful. So I think there's hope is what it comes down to. And I think the picture of what you guys are working on there is a good one for all of us, and at different scales and different sizes. But creating a place for people to connect and enjoy relationships is something that we have to offer. So that's good news.
All right, everyone. Well, hey, thanks so much for listening. We hope this has been helpful for you. And again, Jesse or Jason at reclaimleader.com. Happy to talk with you about life and ministry.
It's fun,
together.
Jason. We've been getting a handful of emails here and there, and it's always fun. We enjoy getting to talk shop with pastors and leaders. So feel free, fire off some good questions or thoughts, or what's working for you.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Fire away. But as we always say, ministry is hard. It is so much better when we do it together. Take care, everyone.